There were 2 pieces of quartz in that box, both of them carefully polished. They had been chipped into driftwood shapes. There were little sparkles of iron pyrites in them like flecks of gold. If they hadn't been so heavy, they would have served as a fine pair of men's cufflinks. They were that close to being a matched set.
How much work went into creating those 2 pieces? Hours and hours after lights out. I knew that the first of the chippings and shavings, and then the almost endless polishing and finishing with those rock blankets. Looking at them, I felt the warmth that any man or woman feels when he or she is looking at something pretty, something that has been worked and made. That's the thing that really separates us from the animals. I think, and I felt something else too, a sense of awe for the man's brute persistence. But I never knew just how persistent Andy Dufresne could be until much later.
In May of 1950s, the powers that be decided that the roof of the license plate factory ought to be resurfaced with roofing tar. They wanted it done before it got too hot up there, and they asked for volunteers for the work, which was planned to take about a week. More than 70 men spoke up. Because it was outside work, and May is one damn fine month for outside work, 9 or 10 names were drawn out of a hat, and 2 of them happened to be Andy's and my own. For the next week, we'd be marched out to the exercise yard after breakfast, with 2 guards up front and 2 more behind, plus all the guards in the towers, keeping a weather eye on the proceedings through the field glasses for good measure.
4 of us would be carrying a big extension ladder on those morning marches. I always got a kick out of the way Dickie Betts, who was on the job, called that sort of ladder an extensible, and we put it in against the side of that low, flat building. Then we'd start bucketing and brigading hot buckets of tar up to the roof, spill that shit on you, and you jitterbug all the way to the infirmary. There were 6 guards on the project, all of them picked on the basis of seniority. It was almost as good as a week's of vacation, because instead of sweating it out in the laundry or the plate shop or standing over a bunch of cons cutting pulp or bush somewhere out in the fields, they were having a regular May holiday in the sun, just sitting there with their backs up against the low parapet, shooting the bull back and forth.
They didn't even have to keep more than half an eye on us, because the south wall sentry post was close enough so that the fellows up there could have spit their chews on us if they'd wanted to. If anyone on the roof sealing party had made one funny move, it would take 4 seconds to come smack in 2.45 caliber machine gun bullets. So those screws just sat there and took their ease. All they needed was a couple of 6-packs buried in crushed ice, and they would have been the lords of all creation.
One of them was a fellow named Brian Hadley, and in that year of 1950s, he has been at Shawshank longer than I had, longer than the last 2 wardens put together. As a matter of fact, the fellow running in the show in 1950 was a prissy-looking down east Yankee man named George Dunn. He had a degree in penal administration. No one liked him as far as I could tell, except the people who had gotten him his appointment. I heard that he was only interested in 3 things: compelling statistics for a book, which was later published by a small New England outfit called Light Slide Press, where he probably had to pay to have it done. Which team won the intramural baseball championship, which September, and getting a death penalty law passed in Maine. A regular bear for the death penalty was George Dunley. He was fired from the job in 1950 when it came out he was running a discount auto repair service down in the prison garage and splitting the profits with Byron Hadley and Greg Stamus. Hadley and Stamus came out of that one, okay, they were old hands at keeping their asses covered. But Dunley took a walk. No one was sorry to see him go, but nobody was exactly pleased to see Greg Amos step into his shoes either. He was a short man with a tight, hard gut and the coldest brown eyes you'd ever saw. He always had a painful, pursed little grin on his face, as if it had to go to the bathroom and couldn't quit manage it. During Amos' tenure as warden, there was a lot of brutality at Shawshank, and although I have no proof, I believe that there were maybe half a dozen moonlight burials in the stand of scrub forest that lies east of the prison.
Donahue was bad, but Greg Stanis was a cruel, wretched, cold-hearted man. He and Byron Hadley were good friends. As warden, Greg Donahue was nothing but a posturing figurehead. It was Stanis and, through him, Hadley, who actually administered the prison. Hadley was a tall, stambling man with thinning red hair. He sunburned easily and talked loud, and if you didn't move fast enough to suit him, he'd clout you with his stick. On that day, our third on the roof, he was talking to another guard named Mert Entwistle. Hadley had gotten some amazingly good news, so he was griping about it. That was his style. He was a thankless man with not a good word for anyone. A man who was convinced that the whole world was against him. The world had cheated him out of the best years of his life, and the world would be more than happy to cheat him out of the rest. I have seen some screws that I thought were almost saintly, and I think I know why that happens. They are able to see the difference between their own lives, poor and struggling as they might be, and the lives of the men they are paid by the state to watch over. These guards are able to formulate a comparison concerning pain. Others can't or won't.
For Bryant Hadley, there was no bias of comparison. He could sit there cool and at his ease under the warm May sun and find the gal to mourn his good luck. Well, less than 10 feet away, a bunch of men were working and sweating, burning their hands on the great big buckets filled with bubbling tar. Men who had took work so hard in their ordinary round of days that this looked like a respite. You may remember the old question, that one that's supposed to define your outlook on life. When you answer it for Byron Hadley, the answer would always be half empty. The glass is half empty. Forever and ever, amen. If you gave him a cool drink of apple cider, he'd think about vinegar. If you told him his wife had always been faithful to him, he'd tell you it was because she was so goddamn ugly.
So, there he sat, talking to Mert Entwistle loud enough for all of us to hear, his broad white forehead already starting to redden with the sun. He had one hand thrown back over the low parapet surrounding the roof, and other was on the butt of his .38. We all got the story along with Mert. It seemed that Hadley's older brother had gone off to Texas some 14 years ago, and the rest of the family hadn't heard from the son of a bitch since. They had all assumed he was dead. And good riddance. Then, a week and a half ago, a lawyer had called them long distance from Austin. It seemed that Hadley's brother had died 4 months ago, and a rich man at that. It's friggin' incredible how lucky some assholes can get, this paragon of gratitude on the plate shop roof said. The money had come as a result of oil and oil leases, and there was close to $1 million. No, Hadley wasn't a millionaire. That might have made even him happy, at least for a while. But the brother had left a pretty damn decent bequest of $35,000 to each surviving member of his family back in Maine, if they could be found. Not bad. Like getting lucky and winning a sweepstakes.
But Byron Hadley, the glass was always half empty. He spent most of the mornings bitching to Mert about the bite that the goddamn government was going to take out of his windfall. They'd leave me alone. They leave me about enough to buy a new car with that heel out, and then what happens? You have to pay the damn taxes on the car and repairs and maintenance. You got your goddamn kids pestering you to take them for a ride with the top down.